People around the world are shocked upon hearing the news that the Carnasa space program has gone into administration. Official sources report the damage from the failed Angervidal.
The agency is widely known for landing a series of missions on the moon between 1964 and 1970, including 2 long-duration outposts.
Which formed in 1951 has had numerous successes over the last few years, and just last month sent humanity's first ever manned mission to Mars, the Demeter project, currently in
Community Station, the cutting-edge space station in low Earth orbit, still remains uncrewed. Public opinion of the project remains low, with many voicing their concerns over the colossal waste of taxpayer money.
We've been given news that a skeleton crew has been appointed to oversee ongoing missions, but as it stands, no new missions are being planned.
An official statement from the agency claims that Director Lev Kartovsky has stepped down from running the program. Kartovsky, who has been head of the agency since its inception, has been the driving force behind some of the program's greatest achievements.
Of the agency's dissolution, we take a moment to reflect on the missions run over the last 20 years.
A damning new report states that Kartovsky has been embezzling money from the agency. Recent analysis shows the agency's finances to be thriving. A healthy grant given for the Demeter mission has mysteriously vanished. Kartovsky has refused to comment.
Recent technological advances from the agency are being sold to the highest bidder. With this, there is hope that the progress generated from these...
With Kartovsky facing trial, all ongoing operations have been handed over to an intermediary. The Demeter mission will go ahead as planned.
Now here at the agency's headquarters, we are sad to report the doors have closed for the final time. This is the closing chapter of a wonderful story of human exploration. Now looking to the future, we can only hope that another takes up the mantle and continues humanity's quest to the stars.
Hello everyone, Carnasa here, and welcome back for the final time to Kerbal Gets Real. That's right, this is going to be the last episode in this series, and we have an awful lot that we need to get on with. But first, I do want to say a massive thank you to everyone that contributed to that introduction section. I will leave a link to everyone's channels down in the description of this video. And yeah, no, thank you everyone so much for doing that. So first things first, we are going to come to the Ellen Cox Memorial Station because this episode is going to be slightly different from a usual episode that I do, in the fact that this is going to take place over way more than half a year. And astronauts don't really survive the rigor of time warp that well, and what we need to do is we need to make sure that everyone that we don't really want to be paying attention to is safely back down on the ground at Earth. So we turned to the ECMS, we grabbed Sono Hero, we grabbed Rahul Menon and Kernforce, and we whacked them back in that lunar Uber and attempted to bring them safely back down onto the surface of Earth. And kind of mini spoiler alert, well, it was fine. We got them home safe. So now with that being done, we are going to be turning our focus to the first of the Jovian moon landers. This is going to be Callisto Lander Spider number 1. And if the name doesn't give that away, well, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be attempting to land on Ganymede. No, we're not. We're going to be landing on Callisto. It is named after the moon that it was going to be attempting to land on. So you can see we do have an encounter with Callisto, and there it is, all in all its glory, even. And we are just going to be performing a quick burn so that we can capture around the moon. So this version of this Jovian moon lander, there's 3 identical craft. This one was entirely overbuilt for landing on Callisto. We had way more Delta V than we needed. This could almost, not quite, but it could almost land with its orbiter stage, which we have just sent crashing off into the surface of Callisto there, whilst we perform our final landing maneuver with the actual lander. I mean, that's what the lander is for. The lander is to safely touch down upon the surface of Callisto, which, any minute now, we have done. We have landed on our first Jovian moon, so now it's only Europa and Ganymede that we're going to be attempting to land on. With the success of CL1 touching down onto Callisto, it's now time to turn our attention to the most important mission of this episode. If not the most important mission of this entire series. It's Demeter, and it has finally arrived at Mars. So what we did then is we did get Felix Yu out on a little bit of an EVA excursion so he could gain all of that EVA science from space high around Mars, and then that way when we get a little bit closer to the surface and we hit space low, we can do that again, and then we can gain even more science when we hopefully return to Earth. But we have fired up our HG3 engines again so we can capture ourselves in a nice low Mars orbit. So that way, we don't go careening back off into the solar system, because that would be terrible. We'd be on some kind of weird trajectory, and I'm not sure if we would actually be able to get the Demeter mission back to Earth. No, we do need to capture at Mars. That is vitally important for this mission. But we have done it. We have captured at Mars. Oliver Arrowood, Kerbal, and Felix Yu are safe-ish in their orbit around Mars. So now that we've done that, it is time to move Kerbal and Oliver Arrowood across to the Demeter lander. Unfortunately, there are only 2 seats in that lander, which does mean that Felix Yu is going to have to remain in orbit around Mars for the next 30 or so days whilst the lander does all of its surface experiments. I do hope he brought a good book. So now with the Demeter lander separated, it's time to fire up those MMH and NTO engines and begin our final descent onto the surface of Mars with a crew. This has undergone a lot of rigorous testing to make sure that this can actually safely land. I did do this on a live stream a really long time ago, and by the point that I'd got to actually landing this, I had kind of forgotten most of what I needed to do. Fortunately though, it wasn't too much to remember. Basically, point retrograde, burn, and let the heat shield slow us down enough so that the parachutes can deploy and safely get our crew onto the surface of Mars. So we do have a lot of drogue chutes on here. We have 4 drogue chutes and we have 4 main parachutes. And then actually, to finish our descent, we are going to need to light up our RL-10 Lunex stage just to slow us down enough so we don't come crashing down too hard. Because to get parachutes to land a lander of this mass, well, they'd need to be massive. There we go, the drogue chutes have deployed and they are starting to slow us down. We pulled a massive 23 Gs with those parachutes actually deploying, so I can't imagine it was particularly comfortable for Kerbal and Oliver Arrowood as they were descending towards the surface. But there we go, we have jettisoned our heat shield and we have fired up that RL-10 engine to slow us down. And I did leave this a little bit late, and we did come crashing down at about 10 meters per second, but we successfully touched down. We have landed a crew of 2 on the surface of Mars. With the successful touchdown, it is now time to get our astronauts out of the Demeter lander and get them on the surface of Mars. They've got a lot of important scientific experiments to be running. They need to grab some samples, analyze them very carefully, and see if there's any signs of life on Mars. Then they need to report that back to David Bowie and finally let him know. So we are, of course, going to be planting an all-important flag. This is going to be Site Aspect, named after Aspect Fanin, who was our most recent casualty in the series. He did get krakened a few episodes back. But Kerbal has now planted the flag. He is now going to be running all of those important scientific experiments. We need those to gain a lot of science so that we can unlock absolutely everything. And then Oliver Arrowood is now out as well. And what a picturesque opportunity. I really like this landing site. I think this was nearby Arabia Terra, I think it's classed as the Midlands where I actually came down. Yeah, I can look at the biome now and I can see, yes, we did in fact land in the Midlands, which is a bit of a shame because the Midlands are everywhere in Mars. So Oliver Arrowood is currently having a little bit of trouble trying to get back into the lander, but luckily we could use our RCS pack to actually make it up the last little bit of the lander. Now all we have to do is we need to remain on the surface for 30 days. That is the requirement for the Mars lander contract, so we are going to have to wait a while. Like I said, Felix Yu is going to be on his own for a long time. The lander is more than capable of staying 30 days on the surface though. It has enough supplies to last for about 90 days, and we do have enough radiators on there so that the hydrolox that is going to power that RL-10 Lunex stage won't boil off, because well, that would be a complete tragedy if that were to happen. 30 days have now passed, and Oliver Arrowood and Kerbal are now ready to return to the main Demeter orbiter. So when I took off this, I used MechJeb Ascent Guidance to actually launch this craft, and ideally what I wanted to happen was I wanted the craft to launch and then ditch those fairings whilst it was airborne. Unfortunately, MechJeb had other ideas and it wanted to ditch those as soon as we fired up our engine, which meant that the RL-10 probably crashed down into the surface of Mars a little bit, but luckily nothing broke. If that were to happen, well, then unfortunately, these two brave astronauts would have been stranded on the surface, and it would have been a little bit like the Apollo 11 mission. I remember reading somewhere Michael Collins, when he was in the CSM orbiting whilst Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong were down on the surface, he was entirely unsure whether they were actually going to return to the orbiter. It was very touch and go. Obviously, it was the first time that man had landed on the moon. This mission was a little bit like that in the way, because Felix Yu also really had no idea whether Kerbal and Oliver Arrowood were going to be returning. Like I said, I have tested this mission extensively, but there's always room, not room for improvement, room for errors. Errors can always happen, especially when you're playing with failure mods. But luckily, the engines that I am using, well, I have used them so much now that the ignition failures are negligible. So this kind of happened. We were inches away from docking when it seemed that my RCS fuel ran out. So, luckily, this craft was filled with nitrogen, so we were able to get Kerbal and Oliver Arrowood, and we were able to use their EVA packs to transfer them over to the main Demeter module. Unfortunately, we weren't able to take our samples. I was a little bit confused here because when I brought up the fuel information screen, it did say that I still had MMH and NTO, which is the RCS configuration that I was using for this craft. I only found out now that I had to enable crossfeed, and that did give us enough RCS to actually perform a dock. Very useful, because otherwise we wouldn't have got those surface samples back home. And that is a lot of science we would have been losing out on. With the lander now successfully docked to the main Demeter module, we're going to have to leave Demeter in orbit around Mars for a rather long time because we need to wait for a transfer window between Mars and Earth. So we're going to leave that in orbit, and what we're going to do is we're going to pay attention to the remaining two Jovian landers. We've obviously already landed on Callisto. We've got Ganymede and Europa to still land on. So this is the first of those two. We are going to be attempting to land on Ganymede. Now, I've cut out a lot of this mission that we'd already seen with the Callisto lander, like doing burns all around Jupiter. I didn't really feel like I needed to show that again because we've already seen it once this episode, and I kind of want to keep things moving and keep things interesting. But you can see we are just about, there we go, we have now touched down on the surface of Ganymede, and that means it's time to focus on the Europa lander. And I had to keep this in just because of the way that those Galilean moons all lined up in that shot there. I thought it was really cool. It also does mean we have in fact found the lost Galilean moons. They have returned. They are around Jupiter yet again, which is fantastic. because, well, we are attempting to land on 3 of the 4. So I didn't decide. I decided not to land on Io. And the reason why is I imagine the delta V that you need to land on Io is going to be astronomical. Obviously, it is the closest to Jupiter, so to actually slow down to an Io orbit, you're going to need a lot of delta V, or you're going to have to do a lot of gravity assists around the different moons. And I have said it in this series before, I'm not the best at performing gravity assists. I can do them and I know how they work. I never seem to have much luck with them, but it is probably something that I will want to try and do in the future. Especially, I do want to land on Io. That would be really cool. And that might come in the next series. But yeah, no, I'm going to have to learn how to do proper gravity assists to do that, because otherwise, it's going to be ridiculous, the mission that we send to Io. But we have managed to capture around Europa. Whilst I was busy talking about Io, we are lighting up our engine now so that we can actually perform our landing. So Europa was really easy to land on. It's the smallest of the Galilean moons, so we don't need a huge amount of delta V compared to Ganymede and Callisto. The hardest part about this was actually, once again, slowing down to a orbit to actually get to orbit Europa, because it's closer than Ganymede and Callisto, so we do need more delta V for that, which meant that we did actually have to use a bit of our lander stage to achieve our orbit around Europa. But that doesn't matter, because like I said, Europa is smaller, so we don't need as much delta V to land. Unfortunately, when we did try and land, well, you just saw what happened. Yeah, we tipped over, so we landed on our side, which is a bit of a shame. Now that we have landed on both Ganymede and Europa, it is time to go into the tracking station and just time warp ahead until we get to our Demeter transfer window, because yeah, they had to wait in orbit around Mars for quite a while for that transfer window to open up. We can see it's actually June 1973 now. So we are going to be joining Demeter again, and we are going to yeet off some supplies that we do not actually need. I brought way too many supplies for this mission, and I thought, well, that's just extra mass. We can get rid of that. We don't need that. We've got more than enough supplies in the remainder of this craft to actually get us back to Earth. There we go. We are firing up that core stage for the final time to perform our trans-Earth injection, and then we are going to be firing up this last stage, which is going to perform the rest of the burn. This is very similar to the core stage in the fact that it is powered by a HG3, except it is only 1 rather than 2. So it's like one of the core stages, just a dinky core stage. It's a lot smaller. And it didn't need to be big. And I built this in, well, I was considering that this would be our main trans-Earth injection stage, but the core stage still had enough fuel left that we could actually use a little bit of that to give us a little bit of a boost. But there we go. We have finished our burn with that trans-Earth injection stage. We are going to stick with it for a while, just because you can see our perigee at Earth, well, we're still quite far away. So we are going to have to perform a deep space maneuver to get us a little bit closer to the surface of Earth. I want to get our perigee to about 30 kilometers. That way, I know I am definitely going to capture Earth. And when I did my tests for this mission in a sandbox save, 30 kilometers when using descent mode on the capsule, it got us to capture at Earth and down in 1, and it also meant that the craft didn't burn up. We didn't suffer ridiculous G-forces whilst we were coming down as well, which is obviously nice. There were a few issues with a loss of consciousness, but oh well, what's a few seconds passed out when you have the massive achievement of leaving Earth's sphere of influence under your belt? That's right, Kerbal, Oliver Arrowwood, and Felix U. Fox, you were the first people to leave Earth's sphere of influence and go to an entirely new planet. And obviously 2 of them landed on that planet. There you go, we can see we are just bringing down our perigee now so that we can get a nice landing when we actually get back to Earth. So, with this mission, obviously I am playing with Kerbalism, and that does mean stress is going to be an issue. And talking about stress, well, we did have a couple of stress breakdowns, but nothing too major. But we have made it back to Earth, and we are going to ditch that stage, and we are basically just going to leave the capsule. That's all we want to bring back down. I did make sure that we had enough food, water, and oxygen in this for the last little stage of this journey, this amazing journey, this interplanetary wonder, a story, an epic for the ages. Yes, they will be telling tales of Kerbal, Oliver Arrowwood, and Felix Yu for thousands of years to come yet, being the first 3 astronauts that obviously did set foot on another planet. But now it is the final few moments of this mission as we re-enter into Earth's atmosphere. I have obviously spoken about it, I have done this, I have tested this a lot, I know exactly where I need to be coming down and how much I can push the capsule basically. But you can see we did lose Kerbal and we did lose Felix Yu. They did pass out. As I did say earlier on, we did have a few issues with loss of consciousness, but Oliver Arrowwood was fine, so I guess he was in charge of the descent and was able to safely bring the crew back down. We did end up landing in the middle of the Middle East, which, yeah, it's quite far away from the space center, so they've probably got a long way to walk to get back. We have done a successful Mars mission. We sent a crew to Mars, we have landed them on the surface, and we have returned them, and we got a huge amount of science for it. We've got 7,500 science points at the moment, which is insane. That's going to be more than enough to buy every single technology that we could ever want. And one thing I am going to do later on in this episode, I am going to fully go through my tech tree, and I'll do that in real time. I've already done that actually, but yeah, you'll see that later on in the episode, kind of me just going through exactly what I've unlocked and exactly where I am at the end of this series. The next thing that we're going to be focusing on is, of course, it's going to be the Titan Orbiter and Lander device. So we are going to be going over to Saturn, and we're going to be attempting Cassini-Huygens, well, 20 years before it happened. There it is, Saturn looking beautiful as ever. I think Saturn might be one of my favorite planets, if not my favorite planet. I don't know if that's kind of cliche. It just looks so cool. The ring system, it just looks so nice. Look at it. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. But what we are doing now is we are going to be plotting out a maneuver so we can encounter Titan. And what I do want to do is I do want to use Titan's rather thick atmosphere. It's not massively thick, but it starts at 600 kilometers. I want to use Titan's atmosphere to slow us down, to capture us into an orbit around Titan. So what the Titan orbiter and landing device is going to do is we have obviously an orbiter and a landing device. However, they are both going to be captured in a Titan orbit by using Titan's atmosphere to slow down. So we've got a heat shield underneath that fairing. And then as soon as we've captured ourselves into an orbit, obviously our periaps at Titan is still going to be low, so we're going to have to fix that for the orbiter. So what we're going to do with the orbiter is once we have captured, when we get to our apoaps around Titan, there's a little engine on the orbiter. We're going to fire that up one final time, raising our periaps so that we're no longer in Titan's atmosphere. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the actual lander, and because its periaps will already be deep within the atmosphere, we don't have to do anything with that at all. It should hopefully capture the next time. Well, not capture, it should hopefully land the next time that we actually enter Titan's atmosphere. Here you go, we can see we are starting to really feel the effects of that Titan atmosphere, whilst also getting a rather lovely shot of Saturn in the background. It does look very nice. Like I said, just not that long ago, I do really like the look of Saturn. I love the whole Saturn system, Titan as well. It's such an interesting moon to go to, obviously being the only other body in the solar system where we know there to be liquid on the surface. Obviously, it's liquid methane or methane, however you want to pronounce it. It's not water, but still, there's liquid on the surface. That's so interesting. But we have split apart our orbiter now. You can see the orbiter is about to fire up its engines so we can raise our apoaps so we don't go back into Titan's atmosphere. Now that we have dealt with the orbiter, it is time to follow the lander down on its journey to the surface of Titan. So this lander is completely untargeted. It's just a bit of a random draw where this thing is going to end up. We could end up in a lake, we could end up on a cliff, we could end up wherever we end up. Basically, because I'm using the atmosphere to actually pick our landing spot, I have no control over this whatsoever. And unfortunately, because I have no control, well, as Titan is tidally locked to Saturn and we can see Saturn disappearing over the horizon, then we are never going to be seeing Saturn again with this lander, which is a real shame because I really wanted to see what Saturn would have looked like from the surface of Titan. And yeah, it's not going to be possible. Saturn will never make an appearance again. But we have deployed our parachute, and you can see we're actually really incredibly close to some of those methane lakes. Would it be nice if this would have been a rover? Then we could have got all of the science that we required from this shores biome, and then just roved over, driven over to the lakes, and got even more science from that new biome. Alas, it is just a simple lander. But we're still going to be paying attention to Saturn because, of course, the egg has made its way over as well. So this is going to be, well, once again, we are going to Titan with this. This is, well, it's Titan Scanner. You can see I had a little bit of an issue with separating there, and I just did a little bit of a time warp so we could magically float through that spent stage and then begin our burn to actually get an encounter with Titan yet again. So the egg, the Titan scanner, is going to be a scanning device to get a biome scan of Titan and then a high-res altimetry scan of Titan as well. I couldn't get a low-res altimetry scan of Titan because the maximum altitude for that scanner happens to be 500 kilometers. Titan's atmosphere starts at 600, so I'm not entirely sure how I would go about doing that. I think there may be a way to cheese it, but I'm not sure. But there we go, we can see the egg has finally cracked, and we can reveal the scanning device that laid underneath the egg this entire time. It's just a probe with loads of scanners and antennas and RTGs and engines on it. And yeah, we're just going to keep this in orbit of Titan for the remainder of time so we can get some lovely maps of the surface of Titan. So now that we have done with everything around Saturn, it is time for another ridiculous time warp session because we need to follow the New Dawn series of missions, which aren't going to be coming around till the late 70s, early 80s, because they were going to Uranus and Neptune. And yeah, it takes a very long time to get to either of those planets, despite the fact that New Dawn 4 did actually use a gravity assist from Jupiter to get there. You can also see we've had quite a few retirements over this extended time warp. So we are now approaching Uranus. We are finally going to be probing Uranus. It's been a long time coming, and yeah. So Uranus at the moment, I am using a visual enhancement pack, JR's visual enhancements pack, which adds a ring to Uranus, and I am fairly certain I have installed it incorrectly on this save because the ring is completely black on one side, like pitch black, and then on the other side, it is bright white. I think we will see it momentarily, and I am fairly convinced that I'm mixing the textures. There we go. So you can see, yeah, it's really, really black, and then it's really white. And it's just a bit of a shame. It looked a bit funny. But we did manage to capture at Uranus, and that means it's time to go to New Dawn 4. And you can see we have come very far into the future for this. Well, the future in this series. We are in June 1982 now. So this episode has been... It's been a really long time in terms of the actual game. in terms of this episode coming out, it's been quite a while as well. It's been 3 weeks since the last Kerbal Gets Real episode, and I do apologise about that, but this has taken a really long time to do for obvious reasons, with everyone getting involved and just the kind of things that went on with the entire mission. But you can see we are attempting to capture at Neptune now. We do have more than enough Delta V to do this capture. I did want to try and get an encounter with Triton as well, but unfortunately, I don't really know what was going on. My maneuver was kind of going really weird, and it just kind of kept going all over the place. But yeah, there we go. We've captured at Neptune. So after following all of those missions through, here we are at the end. And I'm doing this live, as in I'm not doing this as a voiceover. We can see we are on the 17th of June, 1982. So we have gone forward quite a bit in time. It's been, this episode has taken over 10 years to get everything absolutely done. You can see if we go into here, we've got no vessels left. We've got very little technology left. I will go into research and development in a minute and show you what has actually been researched. If I go on my upgrades, we've got 38.22 build points in every single build queue. So everything gets built incredibly quickly. We've finished on almost 19 million? Yeah, 19 million funds. I did have a fair whack more than that. Obviously, with RP-1, maintenance costs has made that go down over the past 10 years, so we have come down a lot. I think I also failed some contracts, so that also, that made my funding go down a little bit. We still got 436 signs as well. So what I'm going to do now is I am actually going to go into research and development. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. No. What I'm going to do first is we're going to actually have a look at the astronauts that we've got left. So in a section of the video, obviously, we saw a lot of them retiring. So we've still got Albert Harper. Albert Harper, our main man, he is still around. He's going to be retiring some point next year. We've still got Astros, CJB, we've got Kerbadine, Lagamorph, we've got Alex Flyer, Oliver Arrowwood, Daniel Morales, Beastly Pig, and Felix U. Fox. So obviously Felix U and Kerbadine and who else was it? Oliver Arrowwood. They came back from Mars earlier on, so they're not going to be retiring for a really, really long time. They are obviously rated as, well, highly rated. They are level 4, because they are the only people that have left the solar system. If we go over to Final Frontier as well, we can see all of the awards and medals that people have got. So obviously Felix U, Kerbadine, and Oliver Arrowwood have got all the lovely Mars ones from going to Mars. Felix U doesn't have the one for landing on Mars because obviously he stayed on the mothership for the duration of that mission. But yeah, I absolutely love this mod. It looks amazing, and all of the cool, like, little ribbons that people get for their achievements. Right, so we've obviously got a lot of dead people, except most of these aren't actually dead. Most of these have just retired. There are only 4 dead people in this entire series. And that was obviously, who was that? It was, see if I can find them. They're not actually on here. It was Ellen Cox, it was James Peters, Bonnie Ellis, and Aspect Fannin. I can't find any of them. I don't know. I know the three that the ECMS was named after, they did die before I got Final Frontier, so that may explain why they're not on there. But yeah, anyway, with that being shown, I'm going to go into research and development now, and we're just going to see kind of like what the tech tree looks like at the end of this. If click-through blocker would let me, there we go. So let's go in here, and I need to, I need to go out because this RP-1 menu, you can't close it from inside the research and development screen. But you can see that takes a really long time just to actually get out, and that is the main reason why I'm starting a new series, because this save just takes forever. So obviously, I've not unlocked orphan parts because I didn't really want to. But yeah, we can see we have unlocked an awful lot if it lets me move around. We have got only a few technologies down in nuclear power generation to get still. We've got the vast majority of everything. In fact, everything that has parts I have now unlocked, except for 2100 to 2149 electric propulsion, and all of these nuclear engines, nuclear power generators down here. So yeah, the tech tree has pretty much been filled, which is really nice. And I am going to be bringing this in to the next RO series that I'm going to be doing. So I am going to follow on basically with a full technology tree. Yes, that sounded really weird when I said that then. A full tech tree. So I think what I will do is we will start the next series in 1985. That way I will have unlocked all of these as well. So we do have everything. We have everything to play around with at the start. And it will be very cool, very interesting to actually get that done. But now, with me showing all of that, to finally finish this series, to really to bring Kerbal Gets Real to its final conclusion, what we're going to do is we're just going to have a bit of a montage of all of the craft that still remain in orbit and still remain around. And then I think at the end of that, just to make it a little bit interesting, what we're going to do, well, we're going to try and blow up as much of it as we possibly can. So for the next so-and-so, I don't actually know how long this is going to be yet because I've not filmed it. Please enjoy this section of everything just looking fabulous and then coming to its ultimate demise. And now it's explodey time. And there we go, with the complete and utter destruction of some of the more special missions that I've done over the course of this series. That is actually the end. That is the end of Kerbal Gets Real. And I thought, for the finish, rather than doing my standard generic Space Center little section, what we do is we'd actually follow Community Station to its ultimate demise. I couldn't really find a way of fitting this in with the music that I picked. Well, in the Hall of the Mountain King, I thought I really wanted to use that piece of music for such a long time for something, and I thought, like, lots of explosions and booms, it would be great for that. So yeah, I was kind of pleased with how that turned out. I think I probably could have done with more explosions, though. KSP could always do with more explosions, but yeah, I was kind of happy with how that turned out. But I just want to say thank you, everyone, for watching this series, for sticking around for this entire series. It's been an absolute joy to film, to do, and to release all of these episodes. What I am going to be doing is we are going to be going on to a new RO series, a new RP-1 series at some point in the near future. Probably within the next couple of weeks to a month, or depending on how busy I am with uni. It's just, I do want to start up again. It will be something that's set probably either the late 80s, 90s, or even 2000s. Private space company kind of idea. And we will be probably focusing on kind of stuff that hasn't been done in Kerbal Gets Real. Manned interplanetary, a little bit more manned interplanetary. Obviously, we went to Mars in this episode. But yeah, no, look forward to that in the next series that we do. But thank you for watching this episode. If you have enjoyed it, why not give it a like? If you've really enjoyed it and want to continue with the content on this channel, please do consider subscribing. I have been Carnasa, and I will see you later.